Hello and welcome back to Jamie Martin Media. And today we're going to be discussing what has been going on at Nottingham Forest. Hello and welcome back to Jamie Martin Media. Today we're going to be discussing what is going on at Nottingham Forest because the situation is an absolute shambles. Now, I'm not someone who likes to say things to sensationalize or to make things worse. I'm a Forest fan. So first of all, I want to establish I love the club. I think every video has kind of proven that. I've gone to the ends of the earth to support this club, not as much as others for sure, because there's people that are there now and watching in Europe and stuff. So amazing from them. But considering my own circumstances, I'd say that I've gone above and beyond to watch my football club, as have many thousands of others who continue to regularly support the club. So let's just get into it. What is going on at Nottingham Forest? Why is Sean Dyche being linked? Is Ange Postecoglou completely in the dark? What is going on? Now, I think it's best that we first start with the fact that Ange Postecoglou's start at Nottingham Forest has been nothing short of horrific. It's been a short time, and the international break for some people is time where Ange can spend time to rethink, to rest, and kind of recoup. How is he going to build this team? How is he going to motivate this team? How is he going to make this Forest team of today into the Forest team of yesterday, where Nuno Espirito Santo took them to Europe and they're now competing in Europe? How can Forest recoup previous form and build a new identity under Ange Postecoglou? Well, I would say we'll find out. But now news has emerged from the Telegraph and John Percy, who is the most reliable Forest journalist without a shadow of a doubt, saying that Sean Dyche is being lined up to replace Ange Postecoglou. Now, that would have come directly from the top. That will have come from the club that this is gonna happen. Because who else is leaking this? Someone at the club is leaking this, and it just makes the situation even worse. If you're going to sack Ange, just sack him. The leaking of other candidates and people to replace him coming in, it just makes the situation toxic and horrible and long-winded. If you are going to sack Ange Postecoglou, now is the time to do it. If you're not going to sack Ange Postecoglou and you're going to give him time, which I'm not sure I'm for, then this is how you've got to do it. Now, the way I've described it on Twitter is it is kind of a stability with Nuno, a gamble with Ange, and then a save us plea for Dyche. The fact that we're 7 games into the Premier League season and we're considering hiring Sean Dyche and we're almost 3 managers in is baffling. It's baffling. We're talking about hoping to get the team of yesterday. Well, at the moment, we're looking at the Forest of yesterday under Fawaz. This is insane. What is going on at the club right now is insane. And again, I hate to criticize the ownership because some people will say it's because, you this and perhaps you're not allowed to. That's not the case. You can say what you want about the ownership. And I think that's it's the good thing about football is that everyone's got the right to an opinion. But I don't like to criticize them purely because there's been a lot of investment from their side. Not every issue the club has had has been down to them. But I do feel that the recent issues the club is facing are a direct result of mistakes from the ownership. And they are mistakes, massive mistakes. Because, first of all, the situation with Nuno, it was a hard one to sweep up because Nuno Espirito Santo had his own ideas of what he wanted. It didn't align with what Forest wanted. And, the two kind of sides part ways. That's just a normal thing in business. The issue is then who you bring in. And the fact that they went straight away immediately to someone that they're close with relationship-wise in Ange Postecoglou said a lot for me because there was some reports and beliefs that Evangelos Marinakis would be somewhat okay with not so great domestic results if it meant good European results. You're not getting either at the moment. And we've already spoken about Ange. So if you do want to kind of jump onto my previous video, please do, discussing all about Ange. I don't want to tear into Ange. I don't want to do anything like that because I've said my piece on him. It's now the international break. And I think that whatever happens now, that's up to the club. And I've said my piece. But I will just say on the Sean Dyche situation, and I'm going to start with some positive things. from a character and style point of view, I think that Sean Dyche is a very likable, good manager. I think he's someone that brings stability to a club, and short term, he could definitely fix a few of the problems. He can paper over a few cracks, and I think he's a really nice guy overall. So, I think that the tough bit for me is sometimes when it comes to critiquing coaches and critiquing certain styles of play, you kind of don't want it to be sounding personal, because I think that Sean Dyche is a really nice guy. Everyone that's met him says he's really nice, and again, he seems like a very likable person. So it's never anything personal with any opinion I've got here. But while I do think that the defensive style would suit, because of obviously the blocks, the way that he plays is more direct and counter-attacking, I do feel like we'd be taking a step back, because even with Nuno, the one thing a lot of us wanted to see was, yes, we still like the transition and the quick counter-attacks, but we actually wanted to see some in-possession work, being better with the ball, keeping the ball for a little bit longer, and just kind of adapting our game style so that we are a bit more, we're a bit more prepared for the various different situations. And when teams do give us the ball, we don't just panic, because that's what we did against Chelsea at the end of the season, and a lot of other times as well, even Man City at Wembley. So I actually think that it would be a step back, because it's almost kind of a regression from Nuno's style. It's more defensive than Nuno. I'll be honest, when we played Everton at their place, Everton probably played the worst football I've seen in the Premier League. I mean, seriously bad. Long balls from the centre-backs up top, just relentless long balls. So do I think that the Everton squad that Dyche had then when we were watching compared to the Forest squad he could have now is better? I mean, look, he will no doubt have much more weapons in his armoury with Forest. But I'm just concerned, because this feels like, in a way, like a sort of just a crazy, trigger-happy kind of situation. Ange Postecoglou's been hired, and in my opinion, there should have been a bit more long-term planning going on here. I do think we should have gone all out for Marco Silva, and his contract is up in the summer. So I can imagine what Forest are thinking is, let's get Sean Dyche in so that he can come and kind of plug the gap until Marco Silva comes in, and then let's build our project around Marco Silva, which I wouldn't be against, by the way, in terms of the longer term with Marco Silva. It's just this season I'm worried about. And the thing is as well, for retaining the players that we want to retain, and by the way, I don't think we're going to keep a lot of the players we'd like to retain this year. I would say that constantly switching styles, constantly changing managers, players just don't want that. Players want that stability. They want to work under a coach. They want to work under a playing style. They kind of want to get into the form, and to get into form, you need to be familiar with the system, and you need to have time. And at the moment, players switching between Nuno's lower blocks to Ange's high lines, and then back down to lower blocks, but a bit more, even more defensively minded with Sean Dyche. I mean, it's just risky business all round. And I think that it's almost an admission of mistake and failure by the ownership, saying that they're now considering sacking Ange and bringing someone else in. And I think the one concern I've got now is that if we do want to try and build something, we do need to look longer term. We need to look longer term. We do need to, and you're always going to take gambles. So Ange was a bigger gamble than I think most managers, but you do need to take a gamble. I would like to see Marco Silva managing this football club come this summer. I mean, or come next week. I would like, and Marco Silva is the one that I would say it would be my choice without a shadow of a doubt. But the likelihood of that happening before the summer is pretty low, unless Forest are willing to fork out compensation. And dare I put in a theory that with Ross Wilson now going, and of course we'll get onto that in a second, the release clause and the money that Newcastle paid to bring him in, could potentially some of that go towards a Marco Silva compensation package. I don't know. I don't think so. But on the subject of Ross Wilson, very important in terms of negotiations and the overall operations of the club. An incredible figure who didn't have the greatest rep at Rangers, but has come in and built a fantastic rep as a very, very good modern day sporting director. And, I do think he'll do very well at Newcastle. And Newcastle are in that transitionary period now where PSR issues are starting to not be as present. The club are trying to transition into a regular feature in Europe. They're building a long-term project under Eddie Howe. And again, they took a gamble, but Eddie Howe knew the league and they wanted to bring in a good character, and Newcastle as a football club is massive. So to say no to that project is quite difficult. And I can imagine that's the same for Ross Wilson as well. So I just wish him all the best. I think he's been great for us. I'm not going to panic and say what's going on behind the scenes. This is mental, but I will say that I do think it's a big loss. And again, the reason being because his work in transfers, getting the right fees for players, getting players over the line. And again, the way that he's supported all the right people in making sure that work and business is done correctly and quickly and, to a good standard is what made him such an asset. So more power to Edu, maybe, or maybe someone else comes in to replace him. We'll have to wait and see. But the situation is a mess, is what I'm trying to get at. And it isn't just because of the Ross Wilson. It's more because of the leaks. If you're Ange Postecoglou right now, I mean, there's reports coming out saying the club are going to give him long-term and they're not thinking about sacking him. And a few days later, they're thinking, we're going to sack him and we're going to bring in Dyche. I just think, honestly, by allowing and leaking things like this, you're giving the media the bait. You're giving the media the bait, and they're all biting onto it. They're all making stories about Forest, and they're all making us look like idiots. The reports coming out and the way that this is being dealt with is actually making the club look amateurish. And that is horrible to say because I love the club, and the things that these owners have done for us has been amazing. But we're actually setting ourselves up to fail. And in the process, we're actually making a lot of enemies. And again, I've never wanted to be liked by other clubs. That's not my achievement. I want to get results. But at the moment, the trajectory we're on, we're complaining about referees, we're complaining about clubs, we're doing all these things. And it's just like, can we please just focus on what's the task at hand is, and that's getting results. And at the moment, no wins in the last 7 games. It's just not good enough. And the fact we're looking at Dyche, again, I like the guy, but that's a massive step back. We're talking about ambition. We're in Europe. We're doing this. And now we're looking, okay, we need Dyche to save us. Really? Less than 10 games into the season and we need Dyche to save us? What is this? What is this? This isn't the Forest we were talking about in the summer where we're saying, wow, look at the kits we've released. Wow, look at the players we're signing. Wow, look at the future and the ambition being shown. Only for us to sack the manager that got us to Europe, for us to bring in a supporting director who, sparked a division that caused the manager to leave, to then bring in Ange Postecoglou, who hasn't won a game in the Premier League since April, and without the Europa League would have gone down as one of the worst managers in Premier League history relative to the club he was managing. And now we're going to go to Sean Dyche, who has just kept Everton off relegation for the last couple of seasons. It's baffling to me. It's baffling. We've taken major steps back. We're not getting the best out of certain players. And I do believe that everyone is a product of their environment. So for someone to say, oh, Gibbs White's just rubbish. Seriously? Do you even watch football? Because we know Gibbs White is one of the best talents around. We know it. We know a lot of these players can be achieving more. We know Hudson-Odoi can be achieving more, without a doubt. We know Chris Wood can be achieving more. And it just so happens that when we change environment and everything changes and everything's up in the air, there's more media attention, all of a sudden players are off form. Is that really a coincidence? I don't think so. I don't think it's a coincidence whatsoever. So I would say this. The club, I think, needs to decide what its vision is. The club needs to decide who's going to lead it. The club needs to decide who is running the football side of the football club. Are the football people doing the football, or is the ownership doing the football? There's always going to be involvement from the owners. I'm not an idiot. I don't think that he's never going to be involved. And I like the ownership, and I think they're brilliant, and they've done a lot for the club. But again, who is going to run the football club? Who's going to do that? Because we need to let the football people do the football, is what I'm trying to say. Because at the moment, it's going to get us into trouble. You know, we've got some brilliant staff, great scouts, you know, great coaches, great academy coaches. You know, we've got a lot of things to be positive about this football club, but we're actually just kind of, we're undoing ourselves, you know, with some really silly mistakes and decisions. And like I said at the start, if you're going to give Ange time, give him time and stick with it. If you're not, don't, and bring someone in. But this whole long-winded, we're going to bring him in, we're going to look at him. They did it during Cooper's era. And that's another thing. The Telegraph mentioned that Evangelos Marinakis actually considered the idea of rehiring Steve Cooper, who's currently at Bromby. What are we doing? What are we doing? I like Cooper. Cooper's a legend, a great person, someone who I had the privilege of speaking to on a number of occasions. You know, as someone upcoming in media and stuff, that was a great opportunity for me. And he really built a togetherness for the fans and the club. He built that bridge between us. And he is one of the best managers that Forest have ever had because of what he did for us. But he didn't get on with the ownership. And it didn't work out in the end because his way of football just wasn't the style of football we needed. So why on earth are we searching for that again? Why is there no better ideas? This is what concerns me, because it's like going back to an ex-girlfriend. You shouldn't do it. It might seem like a good option, but you shouldn't do it. Why are we considering that? Why are we considering going back to an ex-manager? And people go, yeah, but you know, it's a very popular thing to do. Go back to a manager who brought you good times. But think about it relatively. We've just had a manager who got us to Europe. Okay? Steve Cooper just kept us out of relegation, and that was by luck. We got lucky, really. If it wasn't for a 1 year, we wouldn't be here. So we really need to decide what our vision is. We need to decide what kind of football we like. I thought this was the whole point of bringing in Edu, someone who knows a lot about football, who's going to help with the running of the football clubs. What has he actually done so far? Because if this is Edu related, this is a nightmare start. And if it's not Edu related, then someone needs to let him do his job. That's just how I see things. And I don't like to come out and be critical. And actually, I feel bad that I've got limited equipment because I'd like to make this a bit more of a different kind of video with a lot more to it and a bit more quality in terms of the recording and stuff. But I actually want to just start saying how I feel a bit more. And I don't want it to come across as a rant, but we really need to, decide what our vision is. We need to decide who's going to lead it. And we need to decide what this season looks like before we start looking at next season. So if you want my honest opinion, I don't want Dyche. I didn't want Ange. A plus of having Dyche, defensively, we will be stronger. The negatives, I just think that aiming for mid-table and higher, that's gone. I'd rather someone like Gary O'Neill, to be honest with you. And again, even that's not a great idea for me. So there's some serious thinking needed and actually just overall serious learning. This situation cannot be allowed to happen again at a Premier League club that's achieving Europe. And people say, they go, oh, you know, but you're privileged, or you're, I'm thinking of the words, spoiled or whatever. You're entitled. Entitled is the word. It's not about entitlement. It's about knowing what our players can achieve and believing in that. I don't think Forest should get Europe every year, and I don't think we've got a God-given right to be there every year. We certainly don't, so far as this season has been. We don't deserve to be anywhere near there. It's not about entitlement. It's about believing in what this team can achieve. And I do believe this team is capable of achieving so much more. You've got one of the best young midfielders in world football right now. Yes, world football. One of the best achieving young midfielders in Europe, Elliot Anderson. You've got one of the top upcoming number 10s for England, Morgan Gibbs-White. He's a great player. He's class. You've got someone like Nico Williams, who is only going to get better. Milenkovic, one of the best fullbacks in the centre-backs in the Premier League last season. Murillo, one of the best upcoming centre-backs. Matt Sells, one of the best goalkeepers in Europe last season, a Golden Glove winner. Chris Wood, one of the top scorers in the Premier League. Callum Hudson-Odoi, someone who's regularly provided great performances and crucial goals for us. Man City and Liverpool, you can name them. This team has quality. My question is, does it have the belief? Does it have the backing? And does it have the stability? No. So we really need to sort out what this is. We need to make sure the environment is good for these players, because at the moment, how can you expect to get the best out of certain players when the environment just isn't there for them to succeed? So that's my honest thoughts. I don't want Dyche. I don't really want Ange. But more importantly, I don't want the leaks. I don't want the noise, and I don't want extra pressure on these players or the current coaching team. And I do think lessons need to be learned from the ownership, because we have undone one of the best periods, or we're potentially undoing. There's still a lot of time, so I'm not going to panic, but we're potentially undoing one of the best periods of time to be a Nottingham Forest fan, especially in my lifetime. So let me know what your thoughts are, obviously, on the whole situation. A very interesting one. And I'll be back every Sunday discussing the latest Nottingham Forest news, updates, and more. So don't miss it. If you haven't already, drop subscribe. We're trying to get to 2,000 subscribers by Christmas, and we're going to do everything we can to get there. But to do that, we need your support. So make sure you're supporting, make sure you're subscribing, like the video, and drop your comments. See you next Sunday. Take care.